Drake? What? Where's...
The control rods.
Goes right there, see, I
Pulled them out for the test.
You were supposed to...
Put them back into the reactor.
Dude, I'm gonna.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So go...
Pulled them out for the test.
Okay, I will. I see the problem.
Oh, do ya?
So, Dave, we're here today to try something new, because we hate ourselves.
Yeah, apparently we are. We decided that not only are we going to ruin anime series for people, we thought we would spread our shitty wings and let loose a torrent of more bullshit on the internet relating to matters other than manga and anime.
At least we're not running for EU Parliament.
That's true. Imagine how terrible that would be. So yeah, we've decided to branch out into depressing Kino, and we figured that at the moment there is a pretty fantastic piece of television that has been kicking around and has been getting plenty of views that really does fit that niche. And so here we are talking about Chernobyl. It's a 2019 HBO Sky Atlantic production centering on the Chernobyl disaster of 1986 and the immediate aftermath of it and what was done to stop it. Give a summary, Robert. Tell us what happens.
One of the most horrific accidents the world has ever seen occurs, and the Soviet Union and many ministers involved with it try to unfuck everything that end.
Based that, yeah, more or less. A horrific level of suffering and self-sacrifice and heroism that was never really rewarded occurs.
Heroes of the Union all around. You can't really spoiler Chernobyl, because if you don't know what happened at Chernobyl, you're a fucking moron. It's
Yeah,
basically
like,
my logic.
go read a fucking book, Jesus Christ.
Like,
how have you not heard about this? Have you not played Stalker? Fuck's sake.
This is one of the coolest in the sense of exposing why communism is shit, and also one of the most interesting things on why communism is great in the world, because like a lot of the argument around Chernobyl is a problem that could have only ever happened in the Soviet Union, but it's also only ever a problem that the Soviet Union could have fixed, because the amount of sheer manpower and willingness to spend money to fix this issue couldn't have
Biorobots.
Yeah, like everything about Chernobyl is insane to read about.
My knowledge of Russian history is mostly focused on the first half of the 20th century, so the Russian Revolution, the Civil War, and everything leading up to World War I and kind of just afterwards.
Pleb.
Yeah, I know, right? Whereas your knowledge of it seems to be more focused on Stalin and afterwards.
Actually, no, I'm very focused in on Gorbachev. I know stuff about Stalin, and I know little bits about Khrushchev and Brezhnev and Andropov and Chernenko. No, my entire subject was basically from the minute Gorbachev got elected. So, like, I know, like, background stuff.
This is kind of your area, basically.
Yeah, so, like, because I know a lot about all the political ramifications for Chernobyl. I don't know a lot about Chernobyl itself, but I know of how Chernobyl affected the rest of the Union, and how the documentary says that Gorbachev states that Chernobyl brought down the Union. And in a way it did, but not in the way that Gorbachev claims it did.
Who was it written by?
Craig
Mazin?
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 The writer of Scary Movie 3, alright?
Truly a classic. Also, Hangover Part 2 and 3, also known as the worst hangovers. So, he did the Scary Movie 4 as well.
Like, this guy's like absolute trash. Like, I'd avoided every. He wrote the superhero movie.
And yet he comes out with this absolute fucking banger of a. It's quite surprising.
Well, it's maybe like, you know, like, how do I put this? He clearly used other people's work, and that's not a go at him. He used another documentary, I think it's Voices Chernobyl, is the main source for the series, and so he just wrote up a screenplay using that. So he's clearly really good at using someone else's work to make something good.
To be fair, even with this, there have been a lot of really interesting decisions with the writing. What they did with this that's really interesting is they've gone for a very non-linear structure with the show. We open with Legasov's suicide several years after the whole disaster, and even then, in the first episode, the actual disaster itself isn't really shown. You're shown the immediate aftermath with Dyatlov accusing everyone of being delusional after the fucking blast has already gone off. It's not until the final episode that you're shown the reasons for it. I think that's a really, really interesting narrative structure that they followed with this. And it's not the obvious one either.
This is a really good series. Like, it's really well written, and I cannot speak. There's so much scenes in this that caused me actual fucking physical uncomfort watching. Just like making you want to be physically sick, more or less. Like,
it was the moments where you knew stuff stuff that the characters in the show didn't, like when the firefighters are on the ground and picking up pieces of graphite, and you're like, no, mate, don't do that, no, fuck.
Fucked. Don't pick up the spicy rock.
Or the lad on the roof who falls over and spills his spaghetti. That you're also like, oh, fuck, in moments like that as well.
That whole scene was horrendous to watch. Like, I think I nearly had a panic attack watching
That
it.
was so
But that
well
was
done.
all just the composition of the soundtrack as well as the camera and all that.
Yep.
The other thing I really liked about the series is it's horrendously graphic.
Yeah, it does not fuck around at all with
Anything.
what happens to
A
people.
lot of times when you see things like Chernobyl or like nuclear stuff, they shy away from showing you how horrendous death from radiation is.
Yeah, acute radiation syndrome is considered one of the worst ways in the world to die, and this series does not shy away from showing exactly why that is. I really do think that the makeup and the prosthetics department, or whoever's responsible for creating that look for the firefighters once they'd been exposed, like, give those motherfuckers a BAFTA, because Jesus Christ, that was harrowing.
Yeah, and then it's even things like the two men jetting off orders to go stare at the core.
Yeah.
And you see how quickly they just melt, essentially. Even the man who opens the core door and he realizes like his entire side's bleeding from shoving in the door, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Oh,
Like,
you've just been melted. Okay. And then in the final episode, we see all of those guys again just living life and trying to enjoy themselves, and it's like, oh god, okay. A lot of really, yeah, no, I was really impressed by the fact that they didn't shy away from showing just what acute radiation syndrome does to the human body. Yeah, it does not look like, it doesn't look like a lot of fun. Every single character in this show has a purpose or something that they're meant to embody and represent, and they do that perfectly, and then they go away, and they don't need to be used and brought up again. Your minor guys are there to represent these kind of unsung heroes that probably suffered a fuck of a lot of bad shit after they did all this, but they did this anyway to save their fucking country. The soldiers and like that young dude played by the scary Irish boy from Dunkirk all embody like this weird amalgam that you got of these veterans and these younger guys being brought in and everything that they had to do. Emily Watson's character, I know she was a bit controversial for some people. I know a lot of guys on TV were getting pissed off about her. But again, she's meant to represent all of these scientists who were working with Boris and Legasov to try and fix this, and what they were aware of but didn't have the position or the power to be able to speak out about it. So everyone has this purpose that they're fulfilling as part of this show, and they do it perfectly, and then they fuck off, and it's great. This is how a mini-series should be. Performance-wise, again,
Jared Harris.
that man just does good shows, and he just does well in everything. I've not seen him do a bad performance to date. But yeah, no, he was great in The Terror. He was great in Mad Men. He was great in Fringe. He's absolutely great. Stellan Skarsgård as well, another absolutely fantastic performance. Those two really, really worked well together. I loved their performances with their characters.
I really liked Ralph Ineson in this, because I love Ralph Ineson. I love him in everything he's in.
Who did he play again?
He's the guy in charge of the Liquidators. He's also the father from The Witch.
Oh shit, so he was.
Yeah.
Paul Ritter as well.
He's jacked up.
That's not an easy role to do, but he fucking nailed it. He's a loathsome character in this, and he really, really brought that. You need a villain in this. You need someone who you can have put a bit of a human face onto the horror of it all. There's a lot of guys who've not always, some sort of like smaller time actors who've obviously not had as many big roles who've managed to really, really shine in this, and I hope they all do really well out of this, because in terms of performances in this series, I can't point to a bad one. I really loved the way in which, like, the final scene that you have Boris and Legasov together, that scene was great because of everything that they had done beforehand, how their relationship started off on this very rocky, okay, explain a nuclear reactor to me, alright, I don't fucking need you anymore, to this growing level of respect and trust and admiration for one another's work and what they've done, and it has that culminating moment with the two of them sitting there discussing the fact that they both know that they're dying and have probably been given lethal doses of radiation as a result of working in and around the Chernobyl reactor, and both of them being very, very modest about it. It's a really, really beautiful scene, and it works because you've grown to like these characters, and you get the sense of the development that they've gone through together, and this respect that they've developed for one another. I love that. That was fantastically done, and I was really brought by the performances of Stellan Skarsgård and Jared Harris, so props. Soundtrack, I was really, I like geeking out about music, and so I'm going to geek a little bit here. It really reminded me of bands like Health, like this very noisy, distorted kind of soundtrack.
Are you not aware of who did the soundtrack to this?
It was, I looked up the name, but I didn't look up the guy himself.
It's a woman.
Patriarchy.
She's a cellist and she's toured with Animal Collective and Sun, so like absolute fucking...
Classically trained Icelandic cellist named Hildur Gudnadóttir.
You're murdering the pronunciation of that, and I know it.
I can't pronounce it, it's fine. Oh shit, she's toured with Sun O as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Fucking
it's like,
A, boy.
It's just drone metal, the soundtrack more.
Yeah, it is very droney. I got more of a like a Health vibe, but definitely kind of drone metal as well. They clearly took a lot of inspiration from like Geiger counters and this sort of like horrible clicking going on in the background of these very tense scenes that slowly grows and then swells up when it hits its peak. It's so well done.
I think I have a horrible feeling she's going to be the person doing the Joker soundtrack.
Yeah, she is. She's doing the...
We live in a society.
Yeah, she created the score for the second Cesario movie. She's doing the Joker soundtrack. I hadn't discovered her before, but I'm really, really interested to see what she does in the future, because that was a fucking good soundtrack.
Yeah, because like there's so many different scenes where the soundtrack is everything in it.
But it's very quiet as well. It's just very menacing and eerie and just lurking.
And just building, and you can just feel it in your chest as it gets fucking louder. Like
almost like it's embodying the radiation.
the scene on the roof with the Geiger counter is just like I just feel sick watching that. Like it was just it's not like a long, like we're not gonna get Chernobyl 2. Like,
No.
and if we do,
Hopefully.
I'm not watching it.
Hopefully.
Like,
Can we not have a sequel, guys, please?
but you get what I mean. Like they're not gonna do like this company isn't gonna go off and do like one on say 3 Mile Island or Fukushima or whatever other nuclear disaster you want to do an interesting study in. This is very much of its time, of its place, and of its writing.
It never outstays its welcome. It knows exactly what it wants to say, says it, and then stops.
I have only 2 real complaints about the series, and it comes from me being a massive Slavaboo, and it comes from translation issues.
Yeah.
So obviously, the way they change everyone's names isn't how Russians would talk. So like, everyone is using their full names. Like, not as in their full names as in the first and last names, but Russians tend to shorten names. They would use like the first... It's like the difference between Robert and Bob.
I actually thought that the way they used comrade in that was interesting. It was always very much a formal thing, where they were almost using it sardonically.
Yeah.
Like when Emily Watson's character, whose name I forget, is in the library trying to get documents to help her with her situation, and she goes up to the library clerk and says, I need these papers, and the guys come back and say, no, you're only allowed these ones that have been redacted. At that point, she sort of turns to them and goes, oh, thank you, comrade. And it's that kind of, yeah, okay. Even they're aware at this point that comrade is a meme.
It's just it's a slight overuse of the word comrade. It's not like a bad usage, but it is from a translation point of view. I don't like the whole war is bad metaphor put into the Liquidator's bed. You know, like where they're running about and they're shooting dogs and it's pretty brutal and all that. And they're kind of like talking about how shit Afghanistan is and stuff like that. You didn't need to like, it feels shoehorned into me. It's bad enough you're going around massacring fucking pets. Like,
I think
you didn't
you've
need
kind
to
of
put
got
the-
the
yeah,
you've got
like-
the suffering quota going on there already, I guess.
like
I
it just
get
felt-
what you mean.
it
I
felt
like those characters.
cartoonish. I like those characters, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he had to bring up, like, it's the other character, you know, that's like happiness for everyone who reads on the sign. This is like, this is an extended, the whole Quiet on the Western Front reference, like, calm down, like, just shoot the fucking puppies, get it over with.
We've also read that book. It's okay. I get what you mean though about how it was a bit forced when they're talking about their experiences, but
Yeah, it's very
it
shoehorned.
kind of worked. It worked for me, but maybe
Well-
it could have been a bit more subtle.
I think my problem with it is they didn't necessarily use military troops for that. Is more my issue. Obviously, they did recruit in people, so they recruited in firefighters, civil defense troops. They recruited people who were like internal troops to the Soviet Union. There weren't like veterans of the Afghanistan conflict there, because the Afghan conflict was still going on. They were still in Afghanistan. Like,
They needed those lads to, you know, be fighting the Mujahideen.
like at that point, the Mujahideen were invading bits of Russia. Like, that's like. That's why that it's so shoehorned into me. Is like this was the era, like 1985, I think, is when the Mujahideen started winning. So you know, like how Tet Offences is when the Vietnamese start winning Vietnam, but like the war.
What?
doesn't
No,
end
no,
for 2
no,
years.
no. America's never lost a war. What are you talking about? They definitely did not win
1812,
Vietnam.
motherfucker! Burn your ass! So like that's why it feels so shoehorned into me.
Yeah.
Is the whole knowing a little bit too much about the Soviet Union. It's like, this is bullshit.
It's a detail that only a fucking Slavophile such as yourself would notice.
Insert here the band Kino playing their song about how shit Afghanistan is.
Потеряли, чтоб найти свое.
And I have to say the first episode is probably by far the best because of how it's just like it starts off like this is like 3 minutes in, the titles start, and bang, the explosion goes off. And then for the next hour, you're on this horrific roller coaster ride of everything that went on at Chernobyl for the first hour, basically.
I think that's like the first day or two it covers. Like it covers a little bit in the aftermath. All of the guys on the Bridge of Death as well. And
Well, the Bridge of Death is kind of a meme that's never actually been confirmed by anyone. That's kind of a made-up thing in the West.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
But that's not to say it didn't happen, because, like, obviously a lot of what we know from Chernobyl is, like, hugely redacted.
Yeah, they don't really like to admit anything about this. Like, all of the guys who...
Only 31 people died, nothing happened.
Everything is fine. We sorted the problem for definite.
I also like that the series didn't do the whole Gorbachev apologist route. A lot of people like to think of Gorbachev as soon as he came into power as being this great reformer, because obviously he did Demokratia, Glasnost, and Perestroika. All these great policies to reinvigorate the Soviet Union. And then Chernobyl happens after he's launched that, and it just shows you that none of that meant anything to him. Because, like, even in Russia itself, well, the Soviet Union itself, the first news they got about Chernobyl happening was from the West. Like,
Yeah, that's like 4 or 5 days after this shit has already happened.
yeah, so like Gorbachev had already started his policies of Glasnost and Perestroika. Now, the apologist route claims that people were feeding false information to him, but then were they? Like, because like that's kind of the big argument here is like, was the Soviet Union burying its head in the sand and boron just to avoid dealing with a nuclear plant disaster?
To a certain extent, yes, they were, but I think you could probably include Gorbachev in that head-burying scenario. No one really wanted to admit until really it was guys like Legasov and other people who'd been on the ground and people who knew what this meant, explaining to them, no, seriously, this isn't just a small localized emergency
Really, the
or
roof on
accident.
fire. It's only 3.6 rotogens, same as a couple of chest x-ray.
Not terrible.
Pukes in Russian.
Dyatlov posting has been wonderful. This user is delusional. I think that's one of the difficult things about doing a docudrama or doing a historical drama. What should your priority be? Should it be trying to capture it as authentically as possible, even though that one might not necessarily work on screen? Or is it trying to capture the feel and the vibe of what happened and why it happened? And I think that they've managed to strike a balance between the two.
I think the issue is, though, for example, with Legasov, they make it so like he was not purged, but purged. He was never purged, if you get what I mean. He was never fully rewarded or anything like that for Chernobyl. He never got the hero of the fucking Soviet Union and all that. He never got that.
They were trying to push him to the side, weren't they? Like, just kind of not properly cut him off from people, but try to get him to shut up.
Basically, he worked in the same job he'd worked in before. He was still working for Moscow State University before he killed himself. So, like, I don't like, for example, the series, like, makes it out as if, like, he killed himself to get the truth out. He did kill himself, but that's kind of, it's kind of not quite how it worked, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it wasn't the sole reason why he killed himself.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, I think he did kind of commit suicide out of frustration and anger with his role in it, how he wasn't able to fix it to his satisfaction, to a certain amount of guilt in that. Also, the fact that he was dying as well.
But it wasn't the KGB who sidelined him, if you get what I mean. People think the way it worked in the Soviet Union was like the KGB took you back, and then all of a sudden you lost your job, and then you're fired, and then you're a non-person, and then you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, the KGB was powerful, but other people could fucking non-person you as well.
Yeah, like basically the party unpersoned you, which means you get no job, you get no money. Bye. Basically, it's worse than death. Like Legasov, for his role in the whole Chernobyl disaster, should probably have been rewarded to a better extent. But you gotta understand, he was just kind of fucking fucked off, if you get what I mean. Like, they just like, bye. Cherubina, or Boris, the guy played by Stellan Skarsgård, he actually is the guy who got a lot of the credit and all that for Chernobyl.
And to a certain extent, deservedly so as well, I would say.
Because he was like a deputy chairman of a council of ministers. And he went on to being basically the Soviet Union's man who fixed problems.
Yeah, he was like disaster management dude, wasn't he? Because he did the Armenian... what happened in Armenia again? Was that like an earthquake?
It was in the earthquake.
Yeah, he was in charge of that as well. And they never admitted what killed him, although it was probably cancer.
He was
and
70, Dave. That's what what killed him. You gotta remember, like, life expectancy in the Soviet Union was 60 in the 80s. Like, it wasn't like...
So what you're saying is that he did pretty good.
I'm just saying, like, getting to that age is fucking decent. Like, you know?
Yeah, true enough.
I mean, there's also the whole thing of declaring Boris Yeltsin a person of low moral qualities and then dying after Yeltsin's elected, you know? It's always a bit weird, that, you know? Just,
Slightly
you know, saying
unusual.
that out loud, you know?
Not that there's a correlation between him denouncing the new person in charge of the new Russian Federation and then you die shortly after that. That never happens in Russia. They don't assassinate people over there.
Nah.
All the journalists just keep getting sick. I just find it interesting that they never have actually confirmed what he died of. But then that is pretty in keeping with a lot of what they did with all the guys who worked in and around Pripyat and Chernobyl. They just
Only
don't.
31 people died. Come on now, Dave.
Only 31 people died. There are definitely no communities of people with horrible mutations and radiation sickness as a result of this disaster.
I mean, on a personal note, I don't know of any farm animals that were damaged by Chernobyl radiation, but, you know, that's only me admitting to my age a little bit there, so, you know.
Yeah, we definitely didn't feel the effects over here either. It's fine. 31 people died. It's fine. Localized thing. Only 3.6 on the meter.
No nuclear accidents in the Soviet Union. So, like, I'm not saying for a fucking second that, like, what we know is false. What I'm saying is there is arguments to be had that we may never actually know what fully went on.
Yeah, we've got a good idea at this point, but we won't.
Yeah, but we'll never know the full extent of how many liquidators died. The Bridge of Death thing, we don't know how many people died. We don't know how many people died from just being in Pripyat at the time.
Or even just really simple things like to what extent was Dyatlov involved in this disaster? How much of it is his fault? Because, yeah, there's not really a lot of guys around anymore who can offer insight on that on account of them melting shortly afterwards. Yeah. Fuck. That was rough.
Потеряли, чтоб найти свое.
I guess that brings us on to a conclusion.
Just watch the fucking show.
Yeah, seriously, this is, if you're one of the few people, it seems, who haven't watched this yet, because fucking everybody has been watching this as far as I can see. I know HBO has managed to spill their spaghetti a bit over the last year or so with some of their things, but this is not one of them. This is a very, very, very good production that they've done. And they don't have another 7 seasons in which to build up your hopes and then fuck it up. So go watch it. It's worth checking out. Chernobyl is absolutely fucking harrowing, but if you don't mind having your soul crushed by the sheer fucking depression of the whole experience, it's a phenomenal piece of television. I sincerely hope all of the production crew and actors do get their just desserts as a result of being involved in this, because they brought their A game, and y'all motherfuckers should go watch it if you haven't already.
I'm just trying to think what we're going to review next in this horrible series of things that will make us want to kill ourselves.
Yeah, this is now a series, by the way, guys. We've decided we're not just doing anime anymore, because we keep managing to bring up weird stuff that make us depressed in all of our reviews. So we thought we'd kind of turn it into a thing. This is a thing now. You're welcome. We're gonna have to do threads.
We're going to have to do threads.
Fuck.